Hey, it's Soul, and this is Warcraft Weekly. All your feelings crammed into this little space of time. You can help support the channel by liking this video, subscribing for more WoW coverage, and catch me live where I'm streaming. The patch is out, but the season is not. It's something that had to be repeated quite a bit this week as gamers dove into Undermine. We noticed a few distinct kinds of reactions this week, but they don't make up the whole. You and I and the guy in the hood behind you have had very different experiences, expectations met or missed. So what are people saying about Undermine so far? First, it's a fantastic zone if you're into that goblin vibe. As one of the last few locations that have yet to be explored from the early Warcraft franchise, fans have reacted really well to this living city. Every inch of Undermine drips with personality, from the highly detailed interiors, to the goblin-manufactured skybox, to the consequences of their actions, this daily life in a satirical capitalist dystopia. Coincidentally, Undermine is the same size as Suramar City, so it's easy to make comparisons with an otherwise beautiful city that feels sterile, like it's a facade by comparison. It's fitting, given the Nightborn story of isolation and stagnation, but putting the lore aside, Undermine is a city that, exaggerations included, looks like it's been lived in, where the roads, the walls, and the buildings, and of course the people, tell you a story. I think it sets a new bar for city development, and players who were not interested in goblin lore, okay, the opportunity is missed, I get it, but it's thanks to Undermine a new standard is being set for creating a zone that doesn't pull any punches with its expression. It feels alive even before our characters take part in the action, and it's so detailed that it feels like you're seeing something new each time you drive by. Of course, like all things MMO, repetition will grind that luster down, but today, even after a few months of testing, it's such a refreshing look to be part of the city. I mentioned driving, and understandably the drive system has been a mixed bag. Some gamers have been absolutely loving the feeling of zipping around in a roadster tuned way too fast for this space. We can call it a goblin thing, but I don't think it's a great excuse for people who have struggled or just don't like the kind of vehicle speed and, well, they just prefer to steady fly their way around. I was on my own roller coaster of reactions. Like early testing, I had to stop driving because I was getting motion sickness, but since then, while I've had my critiques, I've gotten used to driving. I had to tell myself to think of driving around Undermine like the old racing games where I didn't have an analog trigger to accelerate and had to kind of like tap the gas to keep control. Also, and I think this should have been the default installation, there's a slower engine available when you first get your ride. Choosing it will cut your top speed to about 400% run speed, that's almost half of what the default engine is. This will make the drive experience slower but more manageable for people who just want to go faster than their regular mounts, but not that much faster. I also think it would have been a good idea to take some extra time like with dragon riding and give optional driving lessons to get players not familiar with this sort of gameplay, get them used to the controls. We shouldn't expect drive though to be like skywriting, as in, oh my god, it's so transformative, we're gonna drive everywhere now. No, it's not gonna be like that. I feel like it leans into gimmicky territory, as in, yeah, it's gonna be used in Undermine, but probably not everywhere. But what I'd like to see in the future, in like a more limited scope, tracks added to older zones just like the skywriting cups. It can have that early 2000s pop-up street racing vibe with a sprint down Mount Hyjal all the way down to Winterspring. We can turn the ruins of AQ into an off-road track, or blast down the Barrens, or suck it up and race through the mall with another Eye of the Jailer trying to knock you off. I mean, yeah, sure. Back to reality though, I personally enjoy the slower speed, and I'm just cruising around doing donuts in front of the Incontinental while vibing to the music, which is fantastic. I strongly advise having your music on when you're down here. And let's hope like a year from now I can chill in my house listening to these tracks on a jukebox or something. But what about the content? What about the actual things to do, the excitement of progression? For some players, that excitement was replaced with confusion, as Blizzard they tried to send mostly clear messages of what is and isn't happening, but folks were hung up on the details. When the War Within launched, Mythic Zeros weren't accessible at all. Mythic Plus would be in the second week of the season with Mythic Raids, and changes to all that stuff was gonna come in Season 2. More experiments, more firsts that we need to contend with. And then for technical reasons Blizzard didn't mention until after this patch went live, Season 1 gear could no longer be upgraded, and it came off as a very unpleasant surprise. While the impact isn't as big as some are trying to make it out to be, the confusion there, it's legit. I hope things improve next time, but admittedly, we have had worse than this 1 week of awkwardness. Like, I remember the before times when we had to wait 3 months after Broken Shore opened up to finally get into the Tomb of Sargeras. We waited 6 weeks after patch 8.1 to defend or attack the Zara lore, and since that time the preseason has been limited to 1, maybe 2 weeks. Now I suppose that's a bit too long of a wait for those who felt Season 1 of The War Within was too long, but actually, it was one of WoW's shorter seasons. Up until this week, content creators up and down have been hammering it into folks that despite the distinctions between the patch and the season starting, your best play is to settle all your business before the patch and then gather up a pile of Valor Stones or something this week in prep for Season 2. Segments of players have been kicking up dust over this 1 week before the season gets into gear, like, oh, it's a delay, it's time gating, yada yada. On the other side of the argument are those who point out not everyone is a sweaty gamer rushing to get into keys and raids and delves, and there are points to be made about ensuring a stable launch, and well, maybe 7 days isn't too much to ask for. Now I kind of see what's going on here. Okay, I'm just guessing, but when I take a step back, I see what is the consequence of today's World of Warcraft in the post-borrowed power era. Because at least back in those days, a patch would launch and we had demonstrably more to do, more to chase outside of just the quests and the rep grind limits and the renown pushing and all that before the raid finally opened up. And what I'm talking about is basically the borrowed power thing got some new bells and whistles to play with. We had an opportunity to get more conduit ranks and play with our first domination shard, or to grind our way to that brand new artifact trait or Azurite essence or the first tier of the Netherlight Crucible or a new thing on the mission table. But that era has been over for a few years now, and in a way gamers are being tested. Like, do they need that certain something to keep distracted in cases like the week before a season begins? Like anything evergreen, I hope in future seasons Blizzard really gets to smoothing out how these transitions work. It's going to take some over communication first through like announcements and blog posts and videos and so on, and then smooth it down to getting us accustomed to the flow with consistent tooltips and terms we can gain familiarity with, and the community will do the rest, answering questions for gamers with confidence, because I admit I had to do a lot of bending over backwards over things that I was not sure about. A few bits of news have us taking a peek at the future of World of Warcraft. These are just small things though. In a few weeks, usually just after the Race to World First, we get news of what's next for the game. In this case, it's going to be the 11.1.5 patch, where we guesstimate it's going to release towards the end of April. One of its highlighted features includes Horrific Visions Revisited. Now, if we think back to the first round of Horrific Visions, we visited versions of Orgrimmar and Stormwind. This time around, instead of N'Zoth, we're dealing with Xal'atath. Or maybe it's Locust Walker, and this patch is going to be like a weird voidy training montage, but whatever the case, it'll be in what's likely going to be a new environment. Now, I wonder where that might be. Considering the Liberation of Undermine raid uses the city as a backdrop, who's to say Horrific Visions Part 2 won't turn this into a different sort of void hellscape? We'll learn more in a few weeks, but it might be a good idea to get the lay of the land in advance. An 11.2 patch was also detected via data mining. Now, I'm only pointing this out. I doubt we're going to skip 11.1.7 or get 11.2 that much faster, but what I find kind of interesting is that 11.2 is supposed to introduce another new zone. And there's lots of speculation abound, including hints at Ethereals being very involved, unlike the spattering of cameo raid fights. The Heronir are bound to take an even more prominent role to earn that spot they got in the opening cinematic. My direction is towards Beladar, the giant crystal in Halifal, and the suspiciously open water to the west of the zone. Now, who's to say the, quote, new zone takes us to a transformed part of this region, or, well, here's what would be kind of weird or cool, like maybe this area fuses with the ruins of Karash, the shattered world of the Ethereals, and we're gonna do this, I don't know, sort of interstellar battle deep inside the planet. Like, I'm totally pulling that out of my ass, but hey, that'd be kind of cool. And I finally want to soft confirm what we already know about what's happening towards the end of this year. In an interview with Game Reactor, Holly Longdale points out Legion as her favorite expansion, and that's, quote, we're going to be going back there and experiencing it in a new way. So I think we can push whatever doubts out of the way. The Legion remix is happening, but we don't quite know how exactly. The Mist remix set the standard, and the formula might be copy-pasted with a few twists regarding Legion legendaries and artifact weapons and other appearances, all of them earned via bronze. Now, after their statements about challenge mode dungeons from Mists of Pandaria remix, I can't see the original artifact appearances from the Mage Tower being a thing, so I'm sorry, but I'd rather mentally prepare you. Of course, though, I could be wrong. I'm also trying to keep an open mind here because, well, I mean, who's to say that the Legion remix will be another currency-based infinite power grab? I don't know what the alternatives might be. I'm just trying to keep myself open-minded for what they might have cooked by the end of this year. You know, that with player housing and whatever thing they do, whether it's like Season 4 or something else. That's going to be the show, and I want to pass this off to you. How's Undermine been treating you? Are you part of the crowd who's just jumping in and out after the shakiness of the first few days? Because, well, it actually didn't feel so bad. And are you ready for Season 2? There's a lot opening up at once, and you can count on my Monday video to set you straight for what's happening so you can hit the ground running or at least land on your feet. I'll help you manage the chaos. We've got to give a huge thanks to everyone who's been watching on stream. It was great meeting all these new and awesome faces. Of course, to the value patrons and to you, viewer, you made it to the end. You fed the algorithm. And now, if you don't mind, please like the video. If this was helpful, subscribe for more WoW coverage. Catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.